Though, like after a love affair, it was the #1 most stale atmosphere. Honestly, those guys from office romances are scary. You don't mean... Oh, it's been a while since you last talked. Yeah? Was it a while? No, I wasn't worried about that. More importantly... Oh my. As expected, I think the wiretap I installed in the female teaching staff room has been at least a little useful thus far. We should call this operation the elite female staffer set up with a dilemma. I see. How nice. Understandably, my reaction ended up being pretty idiotic. In any case, the pieces of the puzzles are starting to come together. The worst, largest incident in Hope's Peak Academy's history, Kamakura Azuru and Enoshima Junko. Once we find out what the connection between them is, we'll be able to solve this case. So then, it'll only take a little longer? Yeah, just a little. Kamishiro-kun's expression became shrouded. Putting it another way, we just need to take one more step. Here's my prediction. Once we connect one more piece, all the secrets will be revealed. If that happens, we'll understand soon afterwards. There's only one piece left? So, are you going to talk to the Kamakura Azuru person? They're the culprit, aren't they? Kamishiro-kun made a troubled face, tilting his head to the side at my question. I don't think I can. After all, no one knows where they are. Don't know where they are. So they're missing? I wouldn't call it missing per se. Kamishiro-kun's face only became more and more troubled. His tone of voice became more serious. The human named Kamakura Azuru isn't a member of the regular school, the preparatory school, or the teaching staff. In fact, I can't find any mention of that person's name anywhere in Hope Peak Academy. No boys, no girls, no student graduated or presently attending. Huh? No mentions anywhere. It's like they're a ghost. I think the most likely possibility is someone wiped out the record clean. What nasty business. I believe it would have been someone inside the school, but not someone within this inner workings of the school. It's too risky for them. So then, there's an accomplice within the school? It's strange though. For as long as I've investigated it, I haven't found a single student who knows the person called Kamakura Azuru is. The school began hiding them after the incident, so it would not be strange if there were students who know about them before the incident. However, I never thought there would be no sign of their existence from the very beginning. No way. They really are a ghost. Stop that! They're not anything like a ghost. Kamishiro-kun puffed out his cheeks. He looked really mad. Evidently, he disliked the turn the conversation took. Anyway, Kamishiro-kun cleared his throat slightly and readjusted his face to a more serious expression as he talked. No matter what the reason is, if we don't find out who Kamakura Azuru is, we may have no choice but to give up. Give up? I suddenly raised my voice. Kamishiro-kun shook his finger in front of my face with another tisk tisk tisk. No good to jump to conclusions. As I was saying, we may have no choice but to give up coming at it from that perspective. If we can't figure it out from that perspective, it'll be better to come at it from a different perspective. It's stupid to always look at things from one point of view. For example, if you only ever look at a middle schooler's boobs, you'll never see her ass. I see! Thank goodness. My reasonable reaction turned to an idiotic one, and I replied overly cheerfully. So what's the other perspective? Enoshima Junko, of course. Enoshima Junko. We always return to that girl's name. I felt shivers go down my spine. Thanks to the conversation I overheard from this female staff, I finally understand in what way Junko Enoshima is connected to the worst, largest incident in Hope's Peak Academy's history. Kamishiro-kun shot a quick glance to me. Checking my exceedingly weak reaction, he let out a large sigh. Looks like you don't remember, but other than being the person who started the rumor of the incident, it's a mystery as to what other connection she has to the worst, largest incident in Hope's Peak Academy's history. But it's a mystery I've finally cracked. It seems she's the girl who discovered the incident. Discovered it? But isn't that suspicious? Since this is a mystery novel, she's primarily a suspect, said Kamishiro-kun, nodding. But you know that, don't you? She's already been interrogated by the school. Interrogated? I told you! If you don't remember, check your notebook! Kamishiro-kun was yelling like he was throwing a huge temper tantrum. I quickly read through the notebook. Ah, I see. Junko Enoshima started to spread rumors immediately following the incident, but didn't you say she was interrogated? But if she was released just after that, I mean, she can't be the culprit. Thanks to your awful conversation timing, I've come to a conclusion, big sis. Well, it's just as you put it. It seems like the interrogation was highly relentless. I was thinking it would have been impossible for her to escape. Kimishiro-kun suddenly stopped moving. What's wrong? I see. That's it. The boy's eyes widened. The corners of his mouth shook and trembled. I understand now, big sis, he shrieked excitedly. We completely overlooked the most important part of it all. It really was best to ask you to come help me out, big sis. You did great with the interactive mystery part. With uncontrollable excitement, he enthusiastically took another sweetbread out of the paper bag. As he bit into it, he started to craft a new sentence. By the way, it was a jam bun. What I'm saying is, Junko Enoshima was interrogated by the school. That's where the last piece was hidden. What do you mean? Well, you see, the information I heard while eavesdropping, the interrogation on Junko Enoshima was definitely incredibly thorough. There were things like polygraph testing and kinesics and analysis. They started with cliche things like that, then something called brain fingerprinting, which is slightly different to interrogating. But the thing with brain fingerprinting is it seems to be noted as being a more reliable lie detector than compared to the polygraph test. The point is, they were using tests that measured brain waves directly to see if she was lying. Understand? Not really, but it sounds incredible. That's right, it is incredible. The corners of Kimishiro-kun's mouth twitched up into a smile. Not just that, but none of it would have been possible without an expert. An expert? For the interrogation, it seems the school requested a certain student to assist them. Of course, I couldn't find who the student was, but I finally realized it would be difficult to utilize something such as brain fingerprinting without an expert in the field. They need to collaborate with someone. If they knew, they would have no reason to imagine it. I'm saying there's someone at this school who's familiar with the intricacies of the brain. At that exact moment, an awful thought came wandering into my head. I didn't want it to come true, so I quickly tried to think of something else to distract me. It has nothing to... You know him, big sis. He's the super high school level neurologist, Matsuda Yusuke. I heard something that sounded like a short fuse behind my ear. My brain was drawing a blank. With the death notice from earlier, I thought there was no mistaking there was a connection between Junko Enoshima and Matsuda Yusuke, but perhaps Matsuda knew Enoshima's weakness. Anyway, there must be a reason behind their connection, right? The school's released Junko Enoshima from the interrogation way too easily. He continued to talk on, with his eyes shining brightly. I found myself nodding in agreement to everything he said. After he had spoken for approximately an age and a day, I couldn't help but feel as though I had no energy remaining. Even so, Kimishiro-kun continued to talk. In contrast to his happy, talkative nature, I was looking depressed at best. The point being, I can't help but feel as though Matsuda may have been the hidden last piece, you know? I mean, do you think Junko had been just obsessively aiming at the good relationship between Matsuda and yourself? Hey, if it really is how I think it is, then don't you think that's the connection? I'm not really thinking anything. I don't really know anything. I don't even know how the conversation turned to Matsuda-kun in the first place. I don't know about these overwhelming reasons. It's impossible that everything has a reason behind it. I stopped writing in my notebook. Because my self-defense is working. If something came and threatened my world, it'd be happier if I just forgot about it. Because if I forget about it, that means I have nothing to do with it, and it protects my world. So, I'll look away from life's inconveniences and misfortunes. I'll chase after my world with all the strength I carry. I've cast away my feelings of self-hatred and guilt, because I'll always forget whether or not I turn away from the truth. And so, I have nothing to do with the things I forget. That's my self-defense. Yeah, I really do feel like we'll solve this soon. I suddenly realized, as Kamishiro-kun decided to talk to himself, he was drawing nonsense shapes on top of the table. Say, big sis, it seems like the interior issue is coming soon too. After I solve it, it'll be time for you to get ready to reward me. Polish that fine-ass body. I like to imagine that despite your cute face. At night, you're really the shogun, aren't you? Is that it? I bet you are. After he finished his one-sided conversation, he got up from his chair, though it looked more like he was jumping up and down on it. Alright, we're on the home run now! After yelling out an encouraging shout, he turned around. I'm sure next time we meet, big sis, I'll have this case solved! As he waved his hand, Kimishiro-kun departed from the table. However, after only walking a few steps, he stopped. Oh, right. He looked back, with an expression that told me he had remembered something. If you don't want to be sitting around doing nothing, you could look into Matsuda Yusuke's small problem. Well, it doesn't matter how much you look into it, he won't be killed or anything, but I thought it would be good to mention it just in case. Still, I don't know what sort of secret connection Matsuda and Junko have, but it's better to be careful. Secret connection? Enoshima-san and Matsuda-kun have a secret connection? What the heck? 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 I was attacked by a wave of anxiety. My chest tightened in pain. I felt scared of everything. I was just exhausted. Anyway, it's about time we reach the climax. You should get ready, big sis. Anything could happen. Himashiro-kun finished his warning and turned away. This time he disappeared into the school cafeteria's crowd like a ghost. Thus, I was left alone in the school cafeteria. I was still feeling exhausted. For the time being, I decided on just concentrating on taking several deep breaths. There was no reason for it. I was simply stalling time. This time to solve the mystery. Time always relentlessly continued in a steady stream. That's why I spent this time taking in deep breaths. And I forgot. I forgot everything. Perfectly. Very soon, I couldn't remember why I was taking in such deep breaths. How strange. Well, whatever. There was no more that I could forget. From that point on, I was bright, cheerful, and brimming with positivity. Without so much as a backward glance, I walked to the future, filled with hope. I picked up my notebook from the surface of the table, and with plenty of momentum, I stood from the chair and... Huh? I felt lightheaded, or maybe a little different to that. I suddenly grabbed the table with my hand. I looked to where I was looking previously. The words in my notebook danced around the page, distorting themselves. At that moment, I shivered and felt like a horde of insects was crawling up my back. My knees buckled. I thought briefly about what was happening, and soon I found I was sitting on the chair again. The inside of my head was stained with a metallic gray. My mind was completely blank. I'm tired. My eyelids became heavy, and my face slackened. The world circling me was quickly disappearing. The busy, noisy students around me were vanishing. The human shapes surrounding me were all melting together. It was as if I had been poisoned or hypnotized. I couldn't move a single finger. It was in that complete stillness that I suddenly heard a voice. Boop, 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 boop. An ominous laugh. It was strange, yet sounded so familiar. What's this? Did you actually remember me? I'm happy. Despite your awful habit of forgetting things, you still remembered me. That's right. It's super high school level despair. It's been a while. Boop, 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 boop. Why can I remember? Why did I remember them? Even so, I remembered someone. Before, this voice told me something. Let's meet up again. Then I'll kill you properly. Suddenly, I was looking upwards. Before my eyes was a giant shadow standing over me. The shadow had a familiar face, but I couldn't recall any memory of the face. That familiar face stared intensely at me, like it was trying to look past my skin. Their irises were colored by darkness itself. It was like their eyes were despairing, even in despair. As I looked into those eyes, an unexpected thought popped into my head. Ah, so I'll be killed by these eyes? Unfortunately, I can't actually kill you this time either, they whispered to me, like they were answering my thoughts. Once again, I can't kill you due to circumstances. Since you still haven't tasted enough despair, you need to taste even more despair-inducing despair, you see? Suddenly, all the light surrounding me disappeared. At the same time, I noticed my eyelids were shut. The shadow seemed to cover my face completely. But if you say you don't want to taste that despair, then it means more. If you don't fight despair, you'll never feel hope again. Those were the last words I heard. After that, voices, sounds, everything had disappeared as numbness took hold of my body. All my senses stopped working. I was completely still. I fell out of consciousness. I fell out of it silently. Chapter 6. The man walked to the girl's room quickly. It was clear that the girl had not bothered to take the key from her door earlier. Despite this, there was no one inside the room. He swiftly opened the door, letting a rush of air into the room. Inside the room, there was a poster on the wall which flapped noisily. Why? Why'd she have to be out now? They told her to stay put, even when she had nothing to do. Without realizing it, he felt like shouting obscenities at her. That being said, the man had fully realized that there would have been no sense to be drawn from his words if he had done so. No matter what he said to her, that girl would just forget everything. Letting out a large sigh, Matsuri Yusuke dropped his line of sight to where his hands were. His hands remained scrunched into tight fists. No matter how many times he tried to relax them, it was impossible. He had lost feeling in them long before. He could still feel Marasume Sashun's neck squeezed in between his hands. Marasume Sashun's sore, red eyes flashed through his mind suddenly. He squeezed his fist more. It was like his hands were still wrapped around the boy's neck, suffocating him of air. Why did she have to be out now? He whispered in a much weaker tone than before as he left the room. He exited the dormitory and soon Matsuda found himself heading towards the biology building in the East District. If he were her, then he would be there. There wouldn't be another place a girl who had forgotten everything would be. It wasn't even the height of summer yet, but already the back of Matsuda's dirty shirt was drenched in sweat, covered in precipitation. He felt like he was as heavy as lead. It should have taken around 10 minutes to reach the biology building on a normal day, but this time it took at least twice the amount of time. Even so, Matsuda somehow finally reached the biology building. Looking like a broken wind-up toy, he scaled the stairs in a strange, awkward waddle and within a few minutes was standing in front of the neurology research facility. As he took a deep breath in, he roughly opened the door. He looked into the room of hope. However, there was no one there. It was still too early to be discouraged by this, but an uncomfortable feeling stirred in him. What happened here? It had not been hidden well. There were traces of vandalism in there. On the desk, on the bed, all over the laboratory. Don't tell me. His expression changed as he was quickly hurried to the bed. Something moved under it, as if it had anticipated his actions. Who's there? As he instinctively raised his voice, he reached down and raised the bedsheet. He saw a girl under the bed. Matsuda felt his stab of anxiety ease with some relief, but within the next moment, that relief was blown away. Like an explosion, Matsuda saw the bed thrown into the air. It drifted through the air, looking as though it was much lighter than what it truly was, and soon began to spin around in a dizzying motion. After spun for an inconceivable amount of time, it finally fell to the ground. Like gravity had at last remembered it existed. The bed sheets, still in Matsuda's hand, had flipped upwards and lightly grazed against his nose and floated back down to the ground. A deep rumbling echoed throughout the room. After the rumbling had come to a stop, Matsuda heard a voice, or more specifically, Matsuda heard a laugh. On the other side of the bed stood a girl from before. Wow, talk about good reflexes. I wasn't expecting you to be there. I thought it was yet another idiotic girl. That girl from earlier had a stupid grin plastered to her face, and all the guys I've seen up to now in this place seem to smile like they're bonkers. But maybe their appearance was grandeur enough to make them at least a bit attractive. You? That girl was trying to give him instructions, even if he was in a strange way, and that Matsuda guy asked her questions like he was ignoring her. He just wanted to hear about that girl. He wanted to know about her so much it was unbearable. He was so fascinated by it. He looked at her body over and over again like he was looking it all up. Then naturally, it shouldn't be surprising his Danganronpa was all hope. For fuck's sake! Matsuda suddenly kicked the bed beside him. A metallic clanging echoed throughout the lab. Oh my, oh my! Are you mad? The girl continued smiling all the same, but it's me who wants to be angry. Hey, why aren't you looking at the ridiculously adorable face of one, Enoshima Junko, like a lust-driven demon? Why is it? Hey, why aren't you horny? As he heard the girl's words, Matsuda remembered something. I knew it. You really are weird. Am I? But you see, this is really weird for me. That's your real personality, isn't it? Wait, quit it with those comments about my personality. Enoshima quickly switched to an offended tone of voice. For sure, you're making it sound like up until now I was just feigning innocence, but I've been making sure I keep at least one aspect of me the same. So you'll know it's me for sure no matter how I am. Still, since I bore easily, I pretty much hit the snooze button as soon as you got such a sloppy personality. Even still that, what's your purpose? Matsuda interrupted Enoshima with a question. His expression changed to a glare. Oh, getting serious. You won't waste your time talking to the ever so famous queen of chatting. It's like we're in a Saiyan battle right now. Just answer me. Frustrated, Matsuda raised his voice angrily. What is it you want to achieve? Just what is it you're trying to do? And Enoshima tilted her head slightly to the side. Nothing really. I don't want to do anything. What? It's too late. I shan't do a thing. I'm not going to do a single thing. I have everyone else doing it for me. Guys like the student council, the headmaster, or the steering committee. And also that girl who you absolutely adore. Everyone is running around doing my work. Hearing that, Matsuda's face went dark red. You already know what I'm doing? Whatever are you saying? Enoshima raised her head. Matsuda looked down at her. I've known what you were doing for a very long time now. You've been doing exactly as I intended you to do. So what are you saying? Hey, won't you tell me? Matsuda clenched his jaw at her words. Seeing that, Enoshima quivered with an ecstatic look stuck to her face. Ahem. Matsuda-kun's face sure is amazed right now. That despair-induced face you're showing me, I'd like to see it more. Become more and more and more and more despair-induced. Fuck off. Matsuda's face contorted into rage. Watching him, Inoshima snorted and chuckled. She placed her hands behind her back as she casually inspected her surroundings. Moving on, though. Matsuda-kun, what is it you plan to do from now on? What do you mean? He immediately responded. Inoshima suddenly reached out and grabbed Matsuda's wrist. Oh no, your hand is wounded. You weren't scratched, were you? It looks painful. Should I kiss it better? Matsuda quickly tried to pull away his hand, but Inoshima held on tightly. Now let's see. These scratches were caused by some other guy, weren't they? It looks like he was probably an honor student, but he was terribly ill, and when he made this wound, he was probably bedridden with shock, wasn't he? How do you know that? I don't know. I just understand because it was all part of my plan. Inoshima brought her own face close to Matsuda's pale face and grinned crazily. Oop, boop, 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 boop. Gotcha. Just kidding. She then released Matsuda's hand and once again observed her surroundings. Still, I'm sure there's a precious existence you want to protect. That's right. This is disturbingly similar to that thing with your mother. You must feel awful. Sorry. Oh, speaking of your mother, I can't help but feel that Ryoko-chan looks just like her. You know, they have the same kind of atmosphere and stuff. I wonder if they shared some sort of connection or similarity to each other. Or maybe you're the connection. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but it's nice that your friend is so forgetful. Just like your mother, I gotta say. It seems like guys today are really into MILFs. You especially seem to like those MILFs who forget their own miserable backstory. As she turned to Matsuda, Inoshima looked at him persistently. She happily bounced, walking around him over and over again. That's why you want to protect her well this time? I get it. You feel sorry for her. Even so, you're troubled. You're incredibly troubled. That's what it seems like after what I've been hearing. Inoshima stood in front of Matsuda. She glared more intensely at him. For real though, what do you plan to do from now on? Matsuda opened his mouth, trying to find words to say only to close it again. His pale lips trembled a little but could only muster a glare directed back at Inoshima. Inoshima looked like she had expected his reaction and just began to walk quietly again. I suppose it can't be helped. Oh dear, I'll just have to think about this one a little harder. However, immediately after she said that, she stopped walking. Don't get me wrong or anything, she yelled out as she went bright red with embarrassment. I don't really mind if you don't care about it. Still, it's up to me, even though I'm unreliable, and I can't just leave it be. He didn't understand the reasons why. Inoshima changed her personality with no context. Matsuda wasn't able to follow along with the conversation's direction at all. She paid no mind to his reaction at all and started to walk around again as if nothing had happened. Well, I did say I had to think about this for a bit, but really there's only one way to go about things. Inoshima circled around Matsuda's eyes, followed her, and she continued in a very straightforward tone. It's Kamakura Izuru. No matter what happens, he'll end up with the blame. He ran away, and that's fine since he's the cause of the incident they call the worst and largest in Hope's Peak Academy's history. In that case, it should be easy to fix the issue with the student council president and the issue with the guys from the steering committee. Those guys are just trying to cover it up anyways. Hearing her words, Matsuda muttered inside his head, I knew it. Still, if that guy said what he thought it was true, then that means it just makes less and less sense. Just tell me, what are you trying to achieve? Matsuda asked. You know what? I told you before, didn't I? I'm not trying to do anything, she screamed in a high-pitched voice and then laughed it off. I'm just leaving this interesting tea party. I've had enough interrupting things right now. I'm just existing as a C-list character. I don't do anything else. He didn't know if her words were truly her honest feelings on the matter. No matter how many times she could repeat herself, he probably never would know. Matsuda understood that at least. Well, in the end, it's all up to you. I don't really care what you do with the situation. Yeah, do whatever you like, because I'll accept whatever ending we come to. Inoshima stopped walking. She stood in front of Matsuda and turned to the boy before posing another question. So, what will you do? It is all dependent on whether you go along with it or not, isn't it? Although Matsuda had understood what she was saying, Matsuda had to ask her something. You know where this Kamakura guy's whereabouts are? Nope, not a clue. Inoshima quickly shook her head. Matsuda frowned. But you said Kamakura would get the blame and nothing. Just relax about it. It'll all be clear soon enough. She interrupted him in a high-pitched voice. I know where the guys who know where Kamakura is and what they're doing. So I'll know where Kamakura is too. The steering committee? Ding dong, correct. Inoshima announced with a cocky attitude. If you heard it from those guys, then Kamakura's whereabouts should be easy enough to work it out. But even if they did that, doesn't mean I know where he is, right? Inoshima remained with a cocky attitude, but her voice deepened. That's right, it doesn't mean that. At that moment, the girl's expression slipped and her face deadpanned, like she had lost interest in everything. But perhaps this is not such a big deal. I mean, if those guys don't say it, then that just means Kamakuro's whereabouts remain unknown. Your plan will fail and I'll be ruined. But that's all that will happen. So you shouldn't pay too much mind to it. As she muttered in a monotone voice, Enoshima turned to the window and walked towards it, her eyes filled with melancholy as she leaned against the window and stared outside. The laboratory overlooked the East District's courtyard and the preparatory school's parade. You're talking as if it doesn't matter if I fail. Matsuda raised his voice in a puzzled tone and looked towards Enoshima's back. But it doesn't matter. The girl continued to stare out the window and laugh, absent-mindedly. In private, I would always think something along the lines of how despair-inducingly wonderful it would be to put an end to something as insignificant as small fish. She said things that she never meant to say. Her words were a reflection of her true feelings that lay in her heart. Then that means you really are weird. So you don't like that, do you? Enoshima looked back and had an innocent smile on her face as if he was mistaken. She had the face of the devil one moment, and in the next she smiled like an angel. She hadn't intended to make either face. That's why he continued to shake as he talked with the girl. He felt more than exhausted. That's right. For that girl's sake, it's not like you can lose. Her pure and innocent smile remaining on her face. Enoshima turned and walked silently to Matsuda. Boop, 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 boop. You really are someone who's in true love. You're prepared to fight for your love. I bet when they say love is blind, they were thinking of you. Ah, that doesn't mean you do stupid things. Actually, I'm grateful. You're destined to spend an eternity with that person, so I thank you from the very bottom of my heart. Enoshima walked up to Matsuda and didn't come to a stop until finally their toes were touching. She whispered gently to him, "Do your best, Matsuda-kun, because that's what I expect. Defeat the despair you faced and let hope win, shining victorious, because that's what I expect will happen." As she whispered quietly, Enoshima leaned towards him until their faces almost touched, and she then leaned in more. In the next moment, their lips touched. Matsuda didn't break away. He was puzzled, but he gave up and just accepted it as it was. It was vicious, long, entwining, violent kiss. After a time that was far too long to be described in a single word, Enoshima finally pulled away. In the moments after the kiss, she backed away from him, and in dead silence, she walked to the laboratory door. "Where are you going?" Matsuda asked as he wiped his mouth. In return for the kiss, I thought I'd lend you a bit of a hand," said Enoshima, laughing, but she quickly stopped. "Wait, you don't need to go out of your way." But his mouth wouldn't move. No, it wasn't just his mouth. His entire body felt numb and was immobile. Boop, 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 boop. "Looks like you were caught by such a classic too, Matsuda-kun." Looking at the frozen Matsuda, Enoshima looked like she was a kid who had just gotten a beloved toy. She was smiling, overcome by joy. "You know, lipstick is a dangerous thing. My lipstick, for example, has been tainted with poison." Poison! It just sounds like a classic. So nostalgic. "Ah, but don't worry, it's not life-threatening." Enoshima happily bounced around Matsuda's still form. Knowing her plan worked, she probably let her joy show. She finally let herself bounce in front of Matsuda. "Now then, I should give you one final piece of advice." Enoshima suddenly switched to a serious expression, like a boxer moments before the bell rings. "You know, in this scenario, only you can make the choice, Matsuda-kun. So think carefully, worry about it, and choose the choice you think is best. Hope or despair, the choices are so diverse and yet surprisingly intricately connected. Anyway, have a good think about it. Think. Ah, it's no good. I'm tired now. I wonder if this conversation is just that tedious. Well, whatever. In any case, that's our conversation for now. Goodbye." She brought the one-sided conversation she had started to a one-sided end. Enoshima staggered out of the lab. "Wait!" Despite yelling it out, no sound escaped Matsuda's mouth. The boy stood paralyzed, waiting for feeling to return to his body.
Hope will never die!